Welcome to 10-Minute Mythos. As you may know, I sometimes do these episodes based on a prompt that just comes to me, something that I just see. And that's just happened to me. I've watched Diary of Atop the Fourth Wall, one of Linkara's live shows that he does at conventions, and he was doing an issue of Godzilla, in which Godzilla has blood on his mouth, and Linkara made a joke about Godzilla being a vampire in this version. And of course, I'm always on the lookout for vampire ideas, particularly challenging ones that are really difficult to adapt to a tabletop setting. So I thought, why not do this? Why not go find the kaiju generator at seventhsanctum.com, create a kaiju, and then try to figure out how to make Feed do a kaiju story, how to do a giant monster vampire. So this is going to be challenging, but it's an experiment. We're going to give it a try. So I'm generating this monster now, and here's what I have. The huge plesiosaur that can tunnel through the earth. It is the last survivor of a lost species. It delights in combat. Okay, so that's our monster. It is the last of its species. It delights in combat, which is good, and it can tunnel through the earth, which is useful if it needs to perhaps hide from the sun. There's immediate problems that we have to figure out with this. Like if you're going to do a vampire story and they're going to be giant monsters, how are you going to handle it? So the first thing is I think that the giant size actually can help reinforce monster movie tropes. So get this, if the monster is a vampire, then it really needs to drink the blood of other giant things, right? Like it can, throw people in its mouth like popcorn shrimp all day long, and it's just gonna, it's just gonna be whetting its appetite. It really needs to sink its teeth into like another big juicy monster. So if you accept that premise, then what you've got is a monster who, if it's really hungry, might go on a rampage and people might need to run from it. But if you've got another giant monster attacking your city, then it's great that you've got this giant monster vampire there because it's going to go straight for it. And then maybe, slumber beneath the earth or whatever. So I think this is actually good. It being the last of its species is actually really cool because if we say that it's an alien, like giant monster, that was sort of like its species has evolved to go feed on like the other giant monsters. Maybe we can do like kind of a hokey monster movie thing and say that this is from like some other system in space where like multiple planets in that system support giant monster life. Like that's just what's in that star system. So most of them have survived, and some of them then come to Earth because maybe like there's this link that's opened up, like some kind of warp tunnel or whatever that's it's like opening periodically, or maybe it's like a wormhole that opens onto a specific range of years, so that just now monsters have started appearing from it. But in any case, this monster was the last of its kind. Perhaps when its planet, maybe its whole planet went into the warp, and it was the only survivor, and so it appeared here before. So it's like been slumbering beneath the planet, and now it's going to rise up. It's a plesiosaur, which is an Earth creature. So maybe what we could say is that, like again, we're in like B-movie science right now. Please bear in mind. That dinosaurs emerged from survivors of this world and this other system. So we think of dinosaurs as terrestrial life, but they actually initially evolved from creatures from another world, which is one world in a system full of giant monsters of various kinds, like big rubber suit monsters. And it just so happens that the kind we got crashed on Earth were dinosaurs. So one of them survives because it's a vampire, and maybe it's like one specific, I don't know if it's one specific creature that has vampirism, or if it's like one specific like species of dinosaur fed on others, fed on their blood. Maybe we can leave that to be a mystery. Like we don't know very much about them. Whoever our scientist human characters are will be trying to puzzle this out. Whether he's one of a kind, like even among his own people, or what. So anyway, he's lurking in the earth for a long, long time, hiding from the sun. And finally emerges hungry. And of course, we're not going to get into plot because that's not what these are about. We're doing premise more so. However, in terms of plot, I could easily see this starting with a really fun kind of like you're on a rampage, attacking the townsfolk and really get that all out of your system in your giant monster game before you get into like, Godzilla defending Tokyo mode. When other monsters attack, and now it's like, perfect, food source. The other big question is what kind of vampire stuff are you going to are you going to give to these monsters? So you want to have all the Godzilla stuff, definitely, right? You want to be huge and strong and stomping around and everything. And the feed mechanics, because they're so relative and they're designed for multiple time periods and all that, are really going to be able to handle this well. What I might do is take the D12 traits, which are normally like the strongest traits reserved for vampire powers, and permit those as human traits, non-vampiric traits for the monsters. Or you know what, I might not do that. What I might do instead is have it so basically like human physical abilities are below the scale of the creatures, right? So we can use normal character sheets for giant monsters only, and then other kinds of or only their sheets with the sheets of other giant monsters. And if you're playing a human, then that's like a whole other scale. Like they might have character sheets, but they only really interact mechanically with each other. But everybody's pretty much playing a monster, so that's what we do. What we might do then is have the D12 traits are the traits that come from like being charged up. So basically, if the monster can get the blood of other giant monsters, then it powers up and it gets like, the atomic breath and all that stuff. When it doesn't have it, then it's still got D10 traits on a monster character sheet. So it's still like, you're rolling your giant monster 3D10 against, the Eiffel Tower 2D10. And it's like, bam, no contest. I grab it. But against other giant monsters, then you're at a disadvantage if you haven't fed, because you don't have the big stuff. You don't have the atomic breath and all that. So the other thing to handle is what do you do about human traits versus vampiric traits? So a big part of feed and a big part of vampire literature in general is that you've got this vampirism that is then affecting your life, like it's changing what you were as a human being. What is going to be the dichotomy here? Because if it's a giant monster vampire, that's pretty weird already. What do you then contrast that with? I think that having the human traits represent something like adaptation, like terrestrial adaptation, so that basically your traits that allow you to fit on the planet that you're on could be your effectively your human traits, and then your vampiric traits are the ones that you would get from feeding, and I feel like the vampiric traits could be tied to like an energy source and a building up and an evolution that eventually would move you beyond, like you become Space Godzilla at a certain point, or you become like, Angel Godzilla, like Godzilla the White, and you just sort of ascend and you like fly out into space. But you're no longer tied to, Tokyo or whatever. So, the little boy you befriended, like, you've had to leave him behind because you're just like too pumped up on blood and like you're this like badass energy dragon now. Which is always, of course, it's one of life's greatest choices. You want to be a space dragon, or do you want a little Japanese boy in short pants? I know I've struggled with that throughout my life. But anyway, so I think this dichotomy could actually work, and this gives you the sense of the monster who is both dangerous and really and threatening, but also can be like a friend of children everywhere and all that stuff. This monster specifically we got from the random generator delights in combat, which I think is going to be I think the dinosaur people like that this is one of should be like a kind of like a warrior race. Like it loves to fight, loves to feed, but it also is capable of having like a territorial feeling toward whatever area it's in. So to summarize our basic idea so far, we've got a giant monster, the last survivor of its people, from basically a planet of dinosaurs that was destroyed in a wormhole. It was the only survivor, crashed on Earth, and perhaps it's not the only survivor at that time. There were others, and they basically gave rise to dinosaurs on Earth. But none of the others have survived. Only this one, who has been slumbering beneath the Earth. He can't go out in the sunlight because it will burn him, perhaps, or maybe it just puts him into some kind of crazy slumber or something like that, because it's a very kaiju thing to have like the one big plot device that can beat the giant monster, but then it's back in the next movie. So whatever it is sunlight does to him, something that looks like it kills him, but maybe he survives. So it could be like, turning him to stone or dust, or like rotting the body and decomposing the body, but then it can come back, or something like that. Maybe there's some kind of energy, like some kind of cosmic energy that it can feed on, because that's sort of like the evolution that we're building in. Because the evolution we're building into the character is that it has all these kind of energy powers that as it feeds, it grows. So blood or like cosmic radiation could bring the body back after it's been destroyed by the sunlight. In terms of other vampire weaknesses, the wooden stake thing doesn't make any sense here. I don't think that, actually fire could be really interesting, but not have it be able to hurt the monster, just have it be sort of like the monster fears it, like it doesn't want to go near the fire. And so, but only fires of significant size. So if you want to defend your town, I mean, you could set a giant fire to try to like ward off or corral the monster because it irrationally fears fire. And a fire of a significantly large size could actually hurt it. But sunlight would be the big one, and that would give you your little bit of timing too. It would give the humans time to try to figure out what to do about the monsters during the day, and then at night the monsters would come out and fight. With whatever new monsters are coming through the wormhole at this point. And of course this is going to be a group game. So while we've created one kaiju, either they could all be collectively like the last survivors of their species, or there could be a few different kind of dinosaur ones, or somebody could play, a giant robot maybe. If you wanted to have essentially the mortal option, like a character with no vampiric traits, a monster that doesn't drink blood. Or you could have it be, I like this idea. What if there's basically the condition that is vampirism, the drinking blood and like gaining this energy and all that stuff is like some kind of weird like progenitor race, like whatever giant creatures sort of like seeded life in this star system. And so it's like a rare trait that emerges among a few individuals on each planet, so that you could have new people come through, like new giant monsters who are also vampires come through the wormhole. But this would be like one of the very few giant vampire plesiosaurs. I guess you've got a gonzo setting when you have to specify that, like, we're not just going to have vampire giant plesiosaurs running around everywhere. That would be ridiculous. There's just like maybe 3. So I think we basically got what we need on that. In terms of what the gameplay would be like, that's something that Godzilla movies struggle with. It's like, how do you make it fresh? How do you give people what they want, but also give it some kind of structure and make it feel like there's some kind of, forward motion and originality? What I would do at the tabletop is involve human characters to a limited extent, but I wouldn't make the mistake of letting them take over the game. I would have the players play primarily the monsters and sort of build up to that. And what I might do is focus on like the quote-unquote human traits being relationships. The adaptations to living in the world would be humans that the monsters know and are related to, like scientists studying them, the children they've befriended, the old sailor who like used to like throw out, like knew there was something in the sea and would throw out, fish or whatever for them. And then when the monster rises up, it has friendly feelings toward it. Whatever NPCs you want to have. And they would be represented not as character sheets maybe, but as single traits on the monster character sheet, like in the personal category. Because, these are giant monsters, so they're not going to have like, jobs to go to and, brothers and sisters and stuff like that for the most part. So, although, like you could have the team of monsters who are like siblings and have team attacks and stuff. That would be cool. But anyway, so these NPCs would be represented mostly by single traits, and they wouldn't even really be NPCs. They'd be like peripheral PCs to the monster PC, so that you could bring them into play in the interim, like during the day. You could say, okay, well, that reporter that knows about the monster and had a little, moment looking into its eyes is going to go and try to get involved, like sneak into the place where they're planning to drop an A-bomb on the monster and find out about that plan. And so you would just roll the trait associated with that NPC rather than having a whole separate character sheet. So that way you make sure that the human characters remain definitely adjunct to the main monster PC. And then sort of like the main event of the night at the tabletop is night falls, we pull out the giant monsters, and we like go on the rampage or whatever. It's also going to be important for this mythos, this campaign, the story profile, to say we're going to do a lot of this monster stuff, and we're going to have traits set up for the town or for like with the city, so that we can give some weight to like property damage and all that stuff. Like we're going to maybe have a map of the city and give different traits to the different places, so that the human characters can interact with them as like, oh, there's, the high-tech district, and we're going to go down there and get people to design a special computer program to communicate with the aliens. And so they've got like, Tech District 3D10. Then Tech District 3D10 is also like, I'm going to stomp the shit out of this town. I'm going to roll my giant monster 3D10 against Tech District 3D10. And if you win, then the Tech District is leveled. And so that way, as humans and as monsters, you'd interact with the map of the city on two very different scales. And it would give the monsters something to fight for. Like once you have a hometown and you've got NPCs who are like traits of yours essentially living in that town and helping you during the day, you want to protect the different parts of the town. And so you're going to do your best to limit destruction and fight the monsters who are coming to ravage the town and try to like eat the people. Again, the popcorn shrimp method until you show up, at which point the monsters are always going to go at it, which is what makes this actually work really well for a monster vampire story. The monsters have an incentive to fight instead of just, basically going their separate ways, which is always the Godzilla question kind of. It's like, you've got two monsters in the world at this point, basically, who can have a fist fight with each other. Everywhere else in the world, there's no resistance to them. Why don't they just, give each other a little space? But here it makes sense. They need each other's blood because that's how they feed. And it would complicate friendships between them too, so that if two monsters otherwise would be allies, if they're hungry, then they might initially fight at first because of the compulsion, temptation rules. And all that stuff would be really funny because it's really, those rules are designed for like kind of drama, like vampire story, serious character stuff. And here they would be much more broad, but I think they would actually work because you're playing a monster. And so there would be that destructive side. As a player, I think you'd be happy in a way when your character fails the compulsion or temptation check and ends up, going and stomping on the school or whatever it is, or being in a hunger frenzy and, grabbing the helicopter and tossing it in the monster's mouth. It would be the same story of a monster who's basically trying to be good, but it would be turning it into like a light sort of action comedy sort of campy thing as opposed to the drama that Feed does really well. So that's all I've got. Hopefully this is about 10 minutes. I've actually forgotten to set my timer. But anyway, I want to once again acknowledge and thank Linkara, not that he is watching this, for the idea, and also Seventh Sanctum for the Kaiju generator, which was very useful for this project. And there you have it, giant-sized edition of 10-Minute Mythos.